I've owned this farm for almost 15 years. Never had any serious problems aside from occasional pests and storms, but last week something strange started happening. I noticed footprints in the mud near the cornfield, leading from the road straight into the crops. They weren't animal tracks, nor from a vehicle, just human footprints, barefoot. I figured it might be some vandal, or maybe someone trying to steal corn, so I decided to install security cameras around the property. I placed one specifically facing the entrance of the cornfield, near where I had seen the footprints. The next morning, I went straight to check the recordings. Most of the footage was just the wind rustling the corn stalks, a few insects flying past the lens, nothing unusual. But then I got to the last recording. Captured at exactly 3:12 am, the camera was shaking slightly, like something had bumped into it, but what made me freeze was the figure standing directly in front of the lens. It was a man, or at least something that looked like one pale-skinned, dressed in something dark. He was completely still, staring straight into the camera, and the strangest part, he didn't blink. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. The man didn't move at all. Not even the rise and fall of his chest, no shifting of his weight, just absolute stillness. The only movement in the entire frame was the corn behind him, swaying slightly in the wind. My first thought was that it could be some kind of prank, maybe a mannequin someone placed there to mess with me. But then, after what felt like minutes, he moved. Not his arms, not his legs, just his head. Slowly, he tilted it to one side, like he had noticed something behind the camera. The motion was so unnervingly slow, so deliberate, that I felt an icy chill run down my spine. I kept waiting for him to do something else, to take a step forward or at least blink, but he didn't. He just stood there, head slightly tilted, staring. And then, after another long, agonizing moment, the video cut out. No distortion, no fading, just a sudden stop. My stomach dropped. Whatever this was, it wasn't normal. I didn't waste any time. I grabbed my boots, a flashlight, and my shotgun before heading straight to the cornfield. The sun had barely risen, and the air was still heavy with morning fog. As I approached the spot where the figure had been standing, I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. I kept telling myself I wouldn't find anything, that it was some glitch in the camera, or maybe even a trespasser who had already left. But then I saw them, the footprints. Barefoot impressions in the mud, right where the man had stood. The ground was damp from last night's dew, making them too fresh. I followed them a few steps forward, but my breath caught in my throat when I noticed something impossible. There were no exit prints, no sign of him walking away, no drag marks, nothing. The footprints just stopped, as if whoever made them had simply vanished. I stood there for a long moment, just staring at the footprints. My mind raced for a logical explanation, but none made sense. Even if the man had somehow stepped backward into his own tracks, there should have been some sign and overlap, a smudge in the mud. But no, they just ended. Like he had been lifted straight off the ground. A sudden rustling deeper in the cornfield made me whip my head up. It wasn't the wind. It was heavier, deliberate, like something moving between the stalks. My grip tightened on the shotgun as I took a step forward. "Hello?" My voice felt small, swallowed by the endless rows of corn. Nothing answered, but I swore I heard breathing slow, measured, just beyond my sight. I took another step, flashlight shaking slightly in my hand, sweeping the light over the stalks. That's when I saw it. A gap between the corn stalks, just wide enough to glimpse something pale, a sliver of skin, motionless, watching. I froze. The flashlight beam flickered slightly as my hand trembled. My eyes locked onto that pale sliver between the corn stalks, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. It wasn't moving, but I knew it was watching me. I could feel it. The way you know when someone's standing behind you, even if they don't make a sound. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around and leave, but I forced myself to take one step closer. The moment my foot pressed into the mud, the breathing stopped. The entire field went silent. No wind, no rustling, nothing. Just the oppressive weight of stillness pressing down on me. My own breath sounded too loud in my ears. I raised the shotgun, not even sure what I was aiming at, and took another step. The flashlight beam traced over the corn, but whatever had been there was gone. The space between the stalks was empty now, as if it had never been there at all, but I knew what I saw. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as I scanned the field. The footprints were still behind me, the only proof that something or someone had been standing there. But now there was nothing. Just rows of corn stretching into the distance, still and lifeless. My gut told me to turn back, to leave it alone. But something about the way those footprints ended, the way that thing had just been there and then wasn't, I needed to know more. I forced myself forward, stepping into the narrow path between the stalks. The corn loomed high on either side of me, closing me in, making every noise feel amplified. My boots sank into the damp soil as I moved deeper, flashlight sweeping ahead. The silence was suffocating, and then a whisper. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't leaves brushing together. It was a voice, low, breathless, right behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly dropped the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, shaking as I aimed it back toward the path. Nothing, but I felt it. A presence, standing too close, watching, waiting. My pulse was hammering in my ears. I knew I wasn't alone, even if my flashlight showed nothing but empty rows of corn. That whisper, it had been right behind me. Too close. My skin prickled with the undeniable feeling of being watched. I tightened my grip on the shotgun, trying to steady my breath. Every fiber of my body told me to run, but my legs refused to move. Then, just as I took a shaky step backward, the whisper came again. But this time, it wasn't behind me. It was to my left, then to my right, then in front of me. Soft, breathy, unintelligible. My mind scrambled to make sense of it, but the words, if they even were words, were distorted, stretched, wrong. The flashlight beam flickered again, and for the briefest second, I thought I saw something further down the path. A shape impossibly tall, standing between the stalks. But before I could focus, the light cut out completely. Darkness swallowed me whole. My breath hitched as I smacked the flashlight, desperate to bring it back to life, but it was useless. The night pressed in around me, thick and suffocating. The whispering had stopped, but that didn't bring me any comfort, it made it worse. I could feel it now. Something was there, standing just beyond my reach, hidden in the dark. I tightened my grip on the shotgun, every muscle in my body locked in place. Then, the sound of footsteps, not from me, not from the direction I had come, but a head deeper in the cornfield. Slow, deliberate, like someone or something was stepping carefully, making sure I heard. I took a shaky breath, then raised the shotgun, pointing blindly into the dark. My finger hovered over the trigger, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst, and then the footsteps stopped. I wasn't alone. I knew it, and whatever was out there knew I knew. I stood there, frozen, gripping the shotgun so tightly my knuckles ached. The silence pressed down on me, heavier than before. The thing in the field wasn't moving, but I knew it was still there, watching, waiting. My flashlight was useless, my only light coming from the faintest glow of the moon filtering through the corn. Then something changed. The air. It felt wrong, thicker, like I had stepped into a place I wasn't supposed to be. A metallic taste coated my tongue, and my ears started ringing a high-pitched whine that made my skull throb. My vision blurred for a second, my balance swaying. And in that moment, before I could regain control, I heard it. Right next to my ear, a breath. Slow, wet, not mine. I jerked the shotgun to my side and fired. The blast tore through the night, lighting up the rows of corn for just a second. And in that second, I saw it. A figure, impossibly tall, standing barely a few feet away. But it wasn't right. Its limbs were too long, its head slightly tilted, just like in the camera footage. Its face, I can't even describe it. Like a smear, like something that almost looked human but wasn't, and its eyes black, hollow pits locked onto mine. Then the light from the blast faded, and everything went dark again. The silence after the shotgun blast was deafening. My ears rang, my chest heaved, but I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The flash of light had been too quick, too brief, but I knew what I saw, and I knew it was still there. I gritted my teeth and pumped the shotgun, loading another shell. My hands were slick with sweat, my heart slamming against my ribs. I should have run. I should have turned and sprinted back to the house, locked the doors, called someone, anyone. But I didn't. Instead, I took a step forward towards where the figure had been. The cornstalks around me trembled, not from the wind, but from movement. Something was shifting, circling. My pulse pounded in my ears. I swung the shotgun toward the sound, ready to fire again, but before I could pull the trigger, it spoke. A whisper, low and garbled, like words being played backward on an old tape. It was close, too close. Right in front of me, though I couldn't see a damn thing. Then, something touched my arm, not a grab, not a strike, just the lightest brush of something cold, something that shouldn't have been there. My stomach lurched, and every muscle in my body screamed run. So I did. I bolted. My boots tore through the mud, crushing stalks as I shoved my way out of the cornfield. I didn't care about the noise, didn't care about the branches scraping my arms. I just needed to get out. My breath came in ragged gasps, my legs burning as I sprinted toward the house. But behind me I heard it. Footsteps, not running, not frantic, just walking, slow, steady, deliberate. It wasn't chasing me. It didn't have to. It knew I was already running. That's what made it worse. It wasn't in a hurry, like it was playing a game it had played before, like it had all the time in the world. I reached the clearing near my house and nearly collapsed onto the porch. My hands fumbled for the door handle, slick with sweat and shaking so hard I could barely grip it. I forced my way inside, slamming the door behind me, locking it, deadbolt, chain, everything. My shotgun was still clenched in my hands, my chest heaving as I pressed my back against the wood. Silence, then 3 slow knocks. Not on the door, on the window, right beside me. I stopped breathing. My entire body locked up as my eyes flicked toward the window. The curtains were drawn, but that didn't matter. I felt it standing there, just on the other side of the glass. 3 slow, deliberate knocks, not frantic, not demanding, just letting me know it was still there. My fingers tightened around the shotgun, but what was I supposed to do? Fire through the window? And then what? I didn't even know if this thing could be hurt. My mind raced through every possibility. Maybe it was a man. Maybe it was some lunatic playing games. But deep down, I knew better. I had seen its face. A long, excruciating moment passed, and then the knocks came again. 3 slow knocks. Like it was waiting for me to open the curtain, daring me. My stomach twisted. I forced myself to move, stepping away from the window, away from whatever was standing there. And then the doorknob turned, not a violent shake, not a forced entry, just a slow testing twist, like it was checking if I had locked it. I had, but would that stop it? I backed away from the door, shotgun raised, my hands slick with sweat. The doorknob stopped turning, but I didn't feel any relief. If anything, the silence made it worse. It was still out there, watching, waiting. I moved carefully to the window, trying not to make a sound. I didn't want to look, didn't want to see what was standing on the other side of that thin layer of glass. But some sick part of me needed to know if it was still there. Slowly I reached for the curtain, my fingers trembling. Then a shadow moved. I yanked my hand back like I'd been burned. Something tall had just shifted outside, its shape barely visible through the fabric. The air in the room felt heavy, pressing down on me like I was sinking into the floor. My breath was shallow, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might give out, and then it whispered my name, not loud, not clear, just a breath, distorted and stretched, like a recording played at the wrong speed. But I heard it. I know I heard it. My knees nearly buckled. How did it know my name? I felt ice crawl through my veins. My name. It had whispered my name. I hadn't spoken. I hadn't said a single word since I ran from the cornfield. But somehow it knew me, knew who I was, knew I was inside, trembling like a goddamn animal trapped in a cage. I gripped the shotgun tighter, but it felt useless. What was I supposed to do? Shoot through the walls? Through the window? The thing out there wasn't trying to break in. It was toying with me. I knew deep in my bones that if it had wanted me, it would have taken me already. Then the whisper came again. Closer, right outside the window. I swallowed, forcing my shaking legs to carry me back, away from the door, away from the windows, deeper into the house. My breaths came in short gasps, my mind screaming at me to not look, to just stay put, to wait for morning. But my damn curiosity, my need to know, was stronger than my fear. I turned, just enough to see the window, and there it was. A face, pressed against the glass. Not human, not right. The features were blurred, stretched in a way that made my stomach twist. No eyes, just two deep black holes where they should have been. And that head tilt, the same slow tilt I had seen in the video. It was smiling. I choked on my own breath, stumbling backwards so fast I nearly tripped over the chair behind me. The shotgun shook in my hands, my muscles screaming for me to do something, but what? Shoot the window? That thing wasn't even trying to break in. It was just there, pressing its face against the glass, grinning like it knew something I didn't. The worst part? It wasn't moving. Not blinking. Not breathing. Just standing there, watching. I forced myself to look away, squeezing my eyes shut as if that would make it disappear. My mind was screaming, this isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real, but deep down, I knew better. This wasn't some nightmare I could wake up from. This was happening, right now. And then a sound, not from the window, from inside the house. A floorboard creaked down the hall. Every hair on my body stood on end, my breath hitched in my throat. I had locked the doors, every single one, hadn't I? Slowly, as if moving too fast would make it worse, I turned my head toward the hallway, the dark stretch leading to the back rooms, my bedroom, the office, the spare room I never used. The whisper came again. Inside this time. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I'd be sick. The whisper was inside. The shotgun felt useless in my hands. My brain was scrambling for logic, for anything that made sense, but nothing did. I had locked the doors. I had locked the goddamn doors. How was it inside? Another floorboard creaked. Closer this time. I forced myself to move, gripping the shotgun so tight my fingers ached. Step by step, I backed toward the kitchen, toward the back door. Maybe if I could get outside, maybe if I could make it to my truck, I could just drive, get the hell away from here. But the second I took another step, I heard breathing. Not from the hallway, from right behind me. I didn't think I just turned and fired. The shotgun blast rocked the house, blowing a hole straight through the kitchen wall. Wood splintered. Dust filled the air. My ears rang so loud I could barely hear my own panicked breaths. But there was nothing there. No body, no blood, nothing, except for the whisper, right next to my ear. You shouldn't have looked. A bolt of pure terror shot through me. I ran. I didn't think, didn't look back, I just ran. My boots skidded across the floor as I barreled toward the back door, yanking at the lock with shaking hands. The whisper was still there, crawling into my ears like static, like a voice on an old warped tape. You shouldn't have looked. The door wouldn't budge. Locked, no jammed. I twisted the knob, kicked at it, but it wouldn't open. Like something on the other side was pressing against it, holding it shut. My chest heaved as I spun around, heart hammering against my ribs. The house was dark, impossibly quiet. But I knew I wasn't alone. Then I heard it, footsteps, inside the kitchen. Not walking. Not creeping, dragging. Something was moving toward me, slow and deliberate. My pulse pounded as I raised the shotgun again, but my hands were shaking so hard I could barely aim. My ears were still ringing from the last shot, but I could hear it. A low, distorted breath, and then a shape in the doorway, tall, too tall, bent forward, its neck craned at an unnatural angle, head tilted in that same eerie, inhuman way. It just stood there, watching, smiling. I couldn't move. My body refused to respond, locked in place by pure, suffocating terror. The thing in the doorway didn't move either. It just stood there, grinning at me with that awful, stretched, wrong face. The shotgun felt useless in my hands. What was I supposed to do? I had already fired once, and it hadn't done a damn thing. My breathing was ragged, my chest burning. I needed to get out. Now. Slowly, I edged toward the window. If the doors were jammed, maybe I could break the glass, climb out, and make a run for my truck. But as soon as I took a step, it reacted. The grin widened. The head tilted even further, like it was snapping its own neck just to keep watching me. And then it started moving. Not walking, not stepping, gliding. It slid forward without a single sound, its feet never lifting off the ground. Its arms hung limp at its sides, too long, fingers barely twitching. My heart nearly exploded out of my chest. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I was frozen, trapped in place as it closed the distance. Then it stopped, inches away, close enough that I could see its skin up close. Not skin, not real. Like stretched fabric over something hollow, something that wasn't meant to have a face. It leaned in, too close. Then, in that same distorted whisper, it spoke again. Not yet. And then it was gone, just gone. No movement, no sound. 1 second it was there, nearly pressed against me. The next, nothing. Like it had never been there at all. I stumbled backward, gasping for air. My legs finally worked again, and I ran out the door, into the yard, straight to my truck. I didn't stop, didn't look back. I threw myself inside, locked the doors, and sped off down the dirt road, the tires kicking up dust behind me. I didn't sleep that night. Hell, I haven't slept much since. The next morning, I forced myself to go back. I had to know. Had to see if anything was left behind. The kitchen wall still had the shotgun blast. The footprints were still in the mud. But when I checked the security footage, there was nothing. No figure, no movement. Just me panicking, running from something that wasn't there, but I know the truth. Because sometimes, at night, I still hear it. 3 slow knocks on my window, and a whisper just outside. Not yet.